Hey, sisters. Welcome back to another episode of the Sistahs in Law podcast, featuring intimate discussions with Black women about their trials, triumphs, and tribulations in the legal field. In this episode, I sat down with Anita Moukori, a Black woman from France who lived out a dream, studying law in the U.S. as a Fulbright Scholar. Anita is a law graduate with a double degree in English and French law and an LL.M. in intellectual property from Cardozo School of Law, where she was a Fulbright Scholar. She's currently interning at an IP boutique law firm in Paris. She's passionate about the intersection of law and creativity and loves working on projects that help artists and storytellers share their work with the world. She expressed such joy to be on this podcast, which offers the opportunity to connect with others, exchange ideas, and be part of a conversation about building meaningful and fulfilling careers in the legal field. So I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, here we go.
Hi,
Hi, Anita.
hi, Charity. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for having me.
Thank you for joining us on the Sisters in Law podcast. I'm excited for the audience to see you and hear about your story, especially as a fellow Fulbright grantee. That's
Yay.
so incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Just like it's amazing. I told you before because we had a conversation preparing this podcast episode that just the entire concept of your podcast is just amazing. I love it. I'm so happy you reached out.
Yeah, I'm excited and excited to get into a fellow Black woman's experience with Fulbright too, and then law
Yeah.
school. So a
Yes.
very unique but parallel paths that we took. So I like to start the podcast off with this question. It's the signature question of the podcast, and
Yes. Go
I
ahead.
ask, where are you and your people from?
So I'm from Cameroon. Both of my parents are, and I was born in Paris, and then we went back to Cameroon when I was 6 months, and then we stayed until I was two and a half, and then we moved back to Paris, and then like 6 months after, we moved to Saint-Germain-en-Laye, which is a city like 30 minutes away from Paris, and that's where I grew up, and that's where I live now. So yeah,
Wow,
that's the little story
such a
in
francophone
1 minute.
existence.
Yeah, yeah, very, very much so. Very
I
much
love
so.
that.
It's
Um,
very nice because you get to live in so many different places, and I think reading the questions, that was something, because you don't necessarily ask yourself those questions, but then reading your question and trying to find, like the right answers and everything, I realized that I'm just very lucky and blessed to have like several homes and places I can call home. And it's just, yeah, that made me realize this. Very special.
yeah, it's incredible when people come from such multinational
Yeah,
identities because there's this question of, oh, am I from this place? Am I from that place?
true,
But then
true,
you
true.
can claim whatever you want to
Exactly,
claim.
exactly.
Exactly. So, off of that, can you tell me a little bit more about your journey, where you're from in France, what it was like growing up there, especially as first generation Cameroonian French,
Yes.
and then what led you to study law? Was that kind of
Yeah.
a thing that came up in childhood, or yeah, tell
So,
us more.
so my mom came to France when she was 18 and met my dad when she was like 21. And he also came to France when, funny enough, they were in the same high school in Cameroon, but they didn't know each other. And then they met in France. And so that's how it started, like us having this link with France and Paris.
Wow, so they were meant to
Um,
be, basically. They just
exactly,
needed to
exactly.
find each other.
The right continent where they
Right.
met. And then I think I was very lucky to grow up in a very like inclusive and diverse environment, like even in school, because I attended high school, I attended an international school. I was in the British section, and it was just because you had 14 sections. So you had Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, so British, American, and it just felt like a little world, like a tiny our own little world, and just being able to learn from so many different perspectives. I think it really opens your mind to all of the options you have. And so when at the end of high school came the question of, oh, what am I going to do after this? I still wanted to have a very international background, like
Mm.
international environment and bilingual, bicultural. That was very important to me. And so, yeah, I think my entire like academic journey is just a reflection of how diverse and inclusive my whole life has been. I feel very lucky because our experience in France as a Cameroonian family, it was, I never had any big issues as to where we're from and our origins. And I think that's very rare. I don't recall any incident or anything. So I'm very lucky from that perspective. And law, the topic of law. I think when you're young, I don't believe people when they say, "Oh, I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 5." No,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't. That's not true. But then,
They
so I
had
won't say,
fanciful
"Oh,
ideas of what
exactly,
lawyers study.
exactly." So I can't say I've always dreamt about being a lawyer. No, that's not true. Or like studying law. I think it came really late because I had the first idea of what it would be like to study law because my older brother, he's 8 years older than me,
Oh,
studied law.
wow.
Yeah, but in French, so very like his whole curriculum was in French, and I saw the change even if I was 80. I am 18, 8 years younger than him. I saw a change in how he would approach certain topics like conversations or just like his reflection and everything. And towards high school, I kind of realized that it might be a result of like his studies and how we approach law and what you can gain from your law studies, not only from a legal point of view, but how it can affect, your personal life and how you reflect and think and about so many different things. And so that really attracted me, that I could be able to study something that would constantly stimulate, like intellectually, like stimulating.
Right.
And I also realized, because in high school I studied literature and philosophy, so very theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wanted something that felt very concrete and that has philosophy and literature, love them. They have always have an impact in people's life. But I think I wanted to move towards something more tangible. And law gave me that perspective of, okay, you do this and this has this and this effect on people's life. And I also realized that I would see myself working in the intersection of like art and law and justice and creativity. And so all of that kind of led me to, okay, studying law for the moment, that's the path I want to go on.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. It's so ironic how a lot of lawyers have that English literature, philosophy kind of background.
Background, yeah,
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 but it really lends to the practice of law is very
true,
analytical
true,
and abstract to your point.
true.
But we find ways to make it concrete and
Exactly,
practical.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So let's see. I guess because what we connected on was our mutual shared interest in intellectual property law
Yeah.
and arts, entertainment aspects of that. What first sparked your interest in this area and the idea of studying it in the US even?
I think I'm a massive like I love art, any form of art, I think is just, and I don't, I'm not good like in any particular form, but it's just like observing and like entering entire like a new universe whenever you discover a new artist and everything.
Mhm.
And I think my love for art led me to the conclusion that it has to be included in my life and as much as possible. So
Yeah.
in my personal life, but also my professional life. And I think when you're lucky enough to study something you like law, you think, oh, I know I can push this, as in, I know I can integrate so many other aspects of my personal life and
Mm.
things I like into my professional life. And that kind of led me to IP law. And I think also when I started like discovering the subjects, I was still in France. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so how come? Because I feel like when I started to study law, I didn't necessarily know that I was interested in IP.
I
Now
see.
kind of discovering.
different
family law
areas.
and exactly. And then as soon as I realized, I mean, it just became like obvious because you realize that when someone has an idea, they have to protect it like as much as possible. And I feel like that's when law comes in. It gives them something concrete to all of the abstract ideas and everything. And so just being able to participate in the whole process of creating something or like of storytelling in
Mm,
general, I just realized that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, so studying IP, that's how it came about. Now in the US specifically, I think, and in New York more specific, I think it's just to me, because I was lucky enough to be in a dual degree. So I did 2 years in London and then 2 years in Paris. It's
mm,
already a very diverse and complete program. And going back to London or staying in Paris were two valid options. But
mm.
I thought, a bit, I don't know if it's delusional because it worked out. But when I go back, I'm like, that was a bit much. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, how can I go even further? And the idea of New York, I sat on it for like maybe a good year and then I discovered Fulbright. And then
Mm,
I thought, okay, if I manage to kind of get this scholarship somehow, it would be a good start to like really make this idea something concrete and studying in the US.
mm,
And New York felt like the perfect place
mm.
to study IP because you just, in terms of cultural and art and creativity, it's just to me it's the home of so many like artistic and creative inspirations. It would, to me, it was literally like best of both worlds. I would get the academic like excellence from any university, and I will also get the okay, I can go out and just discover so many other things,
Mhm.
art related or like cultural related things. So yeah,
That's incredible. And I was thinking as you were talking about
yeah,
how it's a little bit delusional to
yeah,
think of these aspects, but I feel like we wouldn't be where we are without a little bit of
exactly.
delusion,
Yeah,
a little
exactly.
delulu.
Sometimes it's good, just a tiny bit. I think it just
Exactly.
pushes you. I think, it means you have aspirations and goals, which
Hmm.
is good. And I feel like if something you aspire to doesn't happen and something you want doesn't happen, it just means you didn't need it. It doesn't mean, oh, you were too delusional. No, it just means there's another path for you. Yeah, so be delusional
Yeah, yeah,
until it
that
works out.
exactly quoted, stated right here on the Sisters-in-Law podcast. No, it's true. It's not everybody's going to understand what
Mm,
your life is meant to be about and what your
yeah.
purpose is. But talking about that, I want to hear more about how
Mhm.
you first learned about the Fulbright program and then what inspired you to apply. Because in the US, we're often most, or not sure how many people know about the
Mhm.
program, but it is a pretty prestigious program in the US, but it's rare to hear about the international side of the program,
Yeah, yeah.
right? So can you
And
tell us?
that's something I was very surprised about
Mm-hmm.
because I want to say in Europe in general, it's not as big as
Mm,
it is in the US. Yeah. So I didn't know about it before I wanted to apply, and I think I randomly stumbled on the website. I think I just wrote something like scholarships for the US.
right.
And I discovered it, and then I read it, and I saw that in France because the amount, and also you have different programs in each country. And in France, for students who want to study in the US, they only take 5 to 6 people. So I read it and I was like, okay, not happening. And then I moved on. And like for
Right.
an entire year, I didn't go back on the website. And I just thought, okay, going to the US and going to New York would be like, in terms of finance, that would be impossible. But then I look back again, delusional. I looked back again and then I thought, okay, so this is what the entire process is, and you need this and this in your application. And then I thought I could just spend 2 weeks on my application, send
Mm-hmm.
it, and see how it goes. I mean, 2 weeks, no more than 2 weeks, but I can put the time and effort and see how it goes. If it goes well, good. And if it doesn't, it's not meant to be, it's fine. And I think even at that point when I started, like I work on my application, I don't think I realized how big it was still. And because when you have those kind of goals and aspiration, I think your family plays a big part in carrying the project and whatever you want with you. And my mom and my brother are very supportive. And that's when my mom realized she said, "Do you know how big Fulbright scholarship is?" And you have like very big politicians and artists and other very well-known public figures who have this scholarship, even presidents and everything. I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, no, not gonna lie, I didn't check that much." And that's when I really looked up the history and why it was creating and the purpose and like how important it is, because I think it's a very important like program, international program. And it makes me really sad that we have, I don't know if we can talk about politics, but just it's being like attacked and compromised. I think that's very
Yeah.
problematic
Mm.
because the meaning of the Fulbright Scholarship is, in my opinion, is like to strengthen international links and exchanges and share cultures with other people and just engage in a real dialogue. And I think trying to block this kind of initiative is very problematic and dangerous and scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how I kind of realized how special and how great this program is and how Fulbright is important for students or for academic exchanges between countries. And and yeah, so the whole process of applying it was heavy, but I
Mm.
think you can relate, it's heavy, but I enjoyed it. I love writing cover letters and like a personal statement, and it's an exercise that I do enjoy. So that was funny. It was difficult, but that was still funny. What else happened? The interview process was also something it
Right.
was very long to prepare
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't really know the questions and how it was gonna turn out. But they're so nice. They make you feel comfortable
Right.
as soon as it starts, and it's more like a discussion rather than, something very formal and that can easily stress you out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just wait. That's the worst part. You just wait for the
Yeah.
answer.
It's a lot of
And so yeah,
anxiety. That's for
exactly,
sure.
exactly. Because then you imagine every possible like scenarios. You
Mm.
think, okay, if I get it, now I have to. It just starts. It just feels like the beginning then.
Right.
If you don't have it, you're like, okay, not meant to be, but still you're sad. I think maybe sometimes you can even be on the wait list, which I think is, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so the wait I think was the most difficult part of the entire process. And it was also scary when I got the scholarship because then I thought, okay, now it's reality and we have to work towards going to New York and we only have a couple of months to think about everything, the
Mm-hmm.
logistic of moving to another continent. And that's just a whole entire process. But yeah, was your experience similar?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, like,
Yeah.
what was that feeling like when you found out that you were being awarded with the Fulbright grant?
Oh, I read the email and I thought, oh, that's fake or something like that. Because that's just how my brain reacts.
Yeah,
It's just like it's when you're reading something or you can't believe something is happening,
right,
you're just like, oh, I might be dreaming. I'll wake up
right.
or like something like that. And so I remember I was in my room and I received an email and it says, "Oh, congratulations!" And I was like, "Congratulations for doing the interview." And then I was like, "No, it's not the real answer." And so I told
Wow.
my brother and he was super happy. And
Mm.
then we told my mom and we had our little celebration
Yeah.
at home. But yeah, I think I just felt very grateful because you realize, okay, I had this project in my mind, and
Mm.
then I voiced it, and then I worked towards it, and then other people believed in it. And I think
Right.
it's very, to me, I was very humbled, and I just felt very grateful that other people believed in me because I wasn't the best at school, unlike law school in my dual
Mm.
degree.
Hmm.
So in terms of academics, I was not in the top, probably not even in the top 10.
Mm.
I
Wow.
loved studying law, but there were moments of just for personal reasons. I had this huge period of doubt, as in, I knew I liked what I was doing, but I wasn't sure where it was going to take me. And then you get frustrated because you're like, oh, but I like what I'm doing, but I don't know where exactly I want to go. But then, and it's just a weird feeling and confusion. And I think it really affected how I saw my studies and everything. but still, I think it was very special to me that even though maybe in terms of grades and everything, it wasn't perfect,
Hmm.
still believe that my project and of going to the US and studying at Cardozo and studying IP was still valid. And it's just very special. And I think, you know, when the like community, I think it's a very good word to describe Fulbright. And
Yeah,
that's
for
just
sure.
when you feel in that moment, I think I really felt, okay, that's what being in a community means. It
Hmm.
means supporting you, even though not everything is polished and perfect
Right.
and brilliant. And even if it doesn't scream excellence, it means you can, it means that I had good foundations.
Mhm.
And that was very important to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds like a very affirming experience for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. Because I think it's just a good message. You don't need to be perfect to achieve like what you want in general. And it's fine to have doubts and it's fine to struggle sometimes and it's not the end, it's just part of the entire process.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very special experience.
Yeah, I would say mine, to answer your
Yeah.
question, mine was very similar. It felt
Okay.
very affirming to say, wow, I went through all of this with a bit of
Yeah.
imposter syndrome thinking, me? I'm gonna get
Exactly.
picked for this? No, I'm not. I'm
Exactly.
just gonna try and see.
Exactly.
Because I applied to Senegal
Yes.
specifically,
Yes.
and I think that year I did the 2016-2017 year, but I was
Okay.
applying in 2015. And I
Okay.
think that was around the time that they stopped doing the Senegalese program. They had
Okay.
just brought it back, and it was a very small number of grantees that would get it. So
Okay.
they published on their website how many people
Okay.
you could expect to see get a grant in
Yes.
each country. And because I was targeting West Africa and
Yeah.
specifically Francophone West Africa, there
Mhm.
was only like maybe two, three countries, including Senegal,
Okay.
that were
Okay.
on the list. And
Okay.
I was like, this feels like a shot in the dark, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
try.
Yeah.
And it's funny with this Francophone connection we have. I
Yes,
studied abroad
that's very funny.
in Paris at Sciences Po, and that
Yeah.
was a place where I came in contact for the first time with
Hmm.
Francophone West Africans.
Yeah.
And there was this one person who is from Senegal, and she was studying there, studying in Paris for the semester as well.
Okay.
And I just had a kinship with her. And I was like, how
Mhm.
do I get to this country? How do I
Yeah.
figure this out? And I remember sitting in one of my international politics class, like looking up how to do this experience again, how to study abroad after you graduate. Because I was
Yeah.
a junior. So I was like, all right, I got to think about what I'm doing after this. And I knew I wanted to go to law school
Hmm.
at some point, but also my
Yes.
parents were in my ear, Charity, you should go right after you
Okay.
finish.
Hmm.
So I was trying to find a program that would allow me time to basically a gap year, but also because I knew it had to be self-funded. I was like, all right, I gotta
True.
find a
True.
program that will pay my way and
Yeah.
also give me enough resources to be able to survive in whatever
True.
country I end up in. And the
Okay.
Fulbright, I don't know how it came up on my end, but my
Yeah.
undergrad institution,
Okay.
Emory, they have a very robust national scholarships and fellowships office
Okay.
where they
Okay.
cultivate the
Yeah.
process internally for us. And
Okay.
that was like its own process was going through Emory, but they're successful in the way that they do their process because
Yeah.
they've had the most they're one of the top Fulbright producing
Okay.
grantees in
Students.
the
Oh,
country. Yeah.
wow. Okay.
So there is a method to their madness.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful I had that platform and I think it just lended itself to me being selected. It was
Yeah.
meant to be. I was at the right institution that
Yeah.
would get
True.
me on a platform. And then just like the passion of the language, I just love French language
Yeah.
and hearing it, and especially Black people. I
True.
was like, well, I got to go to West Africa
True.
because that's not the origin of French speaking people, but
Yeah.
it's where the highest concentration of Black
Yeah.
French speakers are. And I was like, this is the continent, this is the origin of all Black peoples. And
Yeah.
Senegal just represented that for me because my family is generations from the
Mhm.
US, descendant of enslaved Africans. And And we have a strong feeling that we're probably descendant from Senegal or
Yeah,
somewhere on that coast, of course. So there was just so much embedded in that program
yeah,
that just I had to be there. And I'm glad that Fulbright saw me in my passion and was like, yes, you do deserve to be
yeah.
there.
That's
But
lovely.
life-changing
That's
experience for sure. Yeah.
that's what a gap year. People usually do their gap year. They're just like, oh, I'll go. I don't know. I'll do. They usually do something crazy, but it's just your gap year is like ultimate gap year.
Yeah, it was
The
very
best way
intentional.
to live it. Yeah,
Right.
that's so nice. That's so, so
Yeah.
nice.
Well, speaking of cultural exchanges, tell me a little
Mhm.
bit about because you did law school in Paris and London,
Yeah,
what was the biggest difference between studying law abroad versus studying in the US and what the US classroom culture was comparing? Did you notice how legal issues are framed differently in a French context or even a British
yeah.
context compared to the American context?
I think even when obviously when I was still doing the dual law degree, you realize that yes, we are talking about the same, we are talking about law, but then you realize, oh, it feels like they're not speaking about the same thing because you go, you study English and you study English law, and then you think, okay, common law, and then you go back to France, and then it's civil, and it's civil law, and then it's code based. And I think discovering both systems,
Mm.
it's both really rewarding and sometimes they are very distinct, obviously. But I would get confused sometimes. I was like, why are
Can
you saying
imagine.
this when, yeah, it's very important to see how, how yes, we are talking about law, but how different perspectives we can have on the same topic and approaches on the same topic. I'm not going to go into like the specifics, but
Yeah, for sure.
in almost every subject I studied, I could see a lot of similarities, but most of the times there were differences. And so yeah, so the biggest distinction I could make was obviously common law and civil law. And then in terms of like English and then French and then US like school like experience at university, I think English of unfortunately my 2 years in London were during COVID, like right after
Mm,
COVID. So
wow.
from 2020 to 2022.
Yeah, that's a very
Um
specific experience.
yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
specific. So I don't think I we got to experience it how we normally would, but it was great. But very it to a certain extent, if it was like a normal experience, I would say it might be similar to the US in
Mm,
terms of so you have lectures. No, actually no. It's more now that I think about it, it's more similar to French because so in London and Paris we had lectures. So you sit, a teacher speaks. You can in London you can ask questions. We could ask questions and they answer you. It's usually about maybe an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours. In France, you can ask questions, but it's more common that you just sit, you write everything, you digest. Maybe at the end, you go and ask questions. I don't because I'm too shy, but I'll have my friends do that.
yeah.
If I have a question. So that's it. And then in London and Paris, we you had in addition to lectures, you had tutorials. So
Mm,
you're in a small group with the teacher, and then you have for each class you had questions to answer, maybe some problem-based questions or like an essay questions, or just questions about the lecture you just had. And so you answer them and you work, and that's why you go much more like in a topic. Whereas in the US, it's mixed. So you have an hour and a half of lecture and the question part and the question part as well. So it's very the question part, the teacher asks the questions, you answer, and you can ask the question back and everything. So it's all mixed. So I think adjusting to that was to me was a bit difficult because then in because I don't know, I think in France because it has to be very organized and structured and everything. So I was saying that the biggest difference that I had to adjust to was the fact that in the US during a lecture, that's also when the teacher asks you questions, and it's
Hmm.
also when you exchange with him, and you can also ask questions. Whereas in France, whereas in Paris and London, it was separated, the lecture and the tutorial. So that was this clear distinction between those two moments. Having said that, which is something I don't recommend, I'm quite like reserved. So I wouldn't anyway, it's not like I would participate a lot, not gonna lie. I'm
Yeah.
more on the and that's why this podcast, I'm so happy you asked me. But I was terrified because
Mhm.
I'm more on the listening and than the speaking, and
Right.
but it's a good exercise and it's lovely to talk to you, so I'm super happy. So it was something that I had to adjust to, but at the same time it wasn't like scary or anything because it's just you discover a new way of teaching and learning about law, and both ways are so good in my opinion. And it's good, yeah, it's just great to see all of the different methods and each teacher has.
Yeah, that's really powerful and so unique that you're able to get that experience. And I love that
Yeah,
Cardozo
yeah,
also has such a robust, ironically, like mostly
yeah.
French, a strong French contingent.
Yeah, we were a
Yeah.
lot. Not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
Because I know New York is very international,
Right.
and you
Exactly.
hear when you notice it, you hear so many different languages,
Mm.
and it felt like I could hear French all the time.
It's like you never
And
left.
exactly, exactly. But yeah, there is a very big French community at Cardozo, which was
Yeah.
great because then I met a lot of lovely people. So, but yeah,
Yeah, I think I'm always curious because of course there's that a stereotype of the French being the white guy with a baguette and a beret on a bicycle riding around.
yeah,
But we know France is one of the most diverse countries in Europe. And
yeah,
I'm always curious by the experience of Black French people and what it was like navigating, particularly coming from a context like France and then being
yeah,
put in a context like the US. Even though you're in New York, it's still America.
yeah.
So, what was that experience like? Did you notice racial differences in navigating academic
Mm.
spaces? How did you find community and support networks? What was your overall experience like as a
I
Black
think
woman?
I think in I know I don't know if it sounds like I'm not trying to polish things or anything because it's true I can only of course I can speak about people experience in general, but then
Hmm.
obviously the one I can really relate to is my own. I'm so happy and I feel so blessed I grew up in a very inclusive environment.
Mm.
Whereas even if I might have been like the only black girl in school or something,
Mm.
I never felt like it was a weight, or I never felt like I was not in the right place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because my culture was accepted and I was accepted as well. And I think, and that's why I'm so happy that after, because what happened why we moved back to Paris was because my dad passed away and
Mm.
my mom
I hear
wanted to have
that.
a fresh start.
Right.
And I'm so happy that she chose France and the city we live in now
Mm.
because, in my opinion, French is a beautiful country, regardless of the politics now that I have a lot of issues with. It's a beautiful
Understandable.
and very inclusive, yeah, and very inclusive country. And when people ask me this question, I think an example I always give is in French, we don't use the word race. We don't use the word race. We don't, when there are issues related to people ethnicity or something, we don't say racial issues.
Mm.
Like the literal translation is not racial issues. We
Mm.
say societal issues
Mm.
because we don't want a community to feel like that's their issue and you have to deal with it. It's something that the whole French society has to deal with. And I think it's a very like representative example of how, in my opinion, not being from France but moving to France is a wonderful experience. But I can only speak of my experience, that's the thing. And I know it's very different Because Saint-Germain, where I live now, it's very privileged. It's very privileged. And I got to attend schools that are also very privileged. And I know my experience is very different from other people. But yeah, and so when I moved to the US, I knew that there would be differences in terms of how people approach communities and ethnicity and your origins for so many reasons, for so many historical and political reasons. And it was interesting to see how acceptive and welcoming the Black community was in New York and in the US,
Mm,
in my
right.
opinion, in general. I spent my entire year in New York, so I can only speak of New York, but I know
Right.
as a whole, the Black community is very strong and just, I don't have the word in English, but just
You
welcome.
can say it in
Um,
French too. Add a
I
little.
wanted to say, what's the word I wanted to use? That, that it feels, because c'est comme la maison, quoi. It feels like home. It's
Mm,
not just, it's, you feel at home, even if it's not your home, you know what I mean? This sense
yeah.
of community.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just, it goes from just, it's tiny things like you go in the street and you just smile at each other for no
Mm.
reason. You know, it's, I think it's in the very little things.
Yeah.
And I
The
was
little head
very, I
nod,
was,
the
exactly,
acknowledgement,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
true. And it's true. And I was so happy because it's, I think it's in the small things that you realize how important it is to have a community
Yeah.
and to know that when you're out there, you're not alone. So there are so many initiatives to
Mhm.
bring people together from the same community,
Mhm.
whether it's from an, artistic point of view or entrepreneurial in terms of like professional point of view, just trying to create spaces where people feel welcome and empowered so that they can move towards other places that might not feel less welcoming. We know, for example, professional world, it's very difficult to sometimes arrive at certain positions of responsibilities. And I think first to know that you have a community that supports you and that will carry you and help you towards your goal is very important. And I think I in the US I saw this aspect of being part of a group and a community much more than I had experienced it in France. But
Mhm.
it's also I don't think it's because I'm not saying it's because we don't have this in France. I think it might also be a question of, oh, when I'm in France, I wasn't it wasn't this period of my life, you know, as
Mhm.
in I wasn't trying to get an internship or work or something. But it's when I went to the US when you start thinking about, okay, what I want to do afterwards and everything
Mhm.
and how I can use as much help as I can get from people around me, that you find this like level of fraternity in the Black community. And I think that's very important. And that was beautiful to me. I think that's like my biggest takeaway. Because, yeah, it just means you create like links and relationships with people. You share something common, like
Right.
you have something that you share that makes you think, I'll help you and I'm here for you. And even though, even though I don't know you, or even though we're not related by blood, and yeah, I really saw that in the US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that because that's partly why I created this podcast and want to have
Yeah.
a community around it because it is rare to meet other Black women in the law. And
Yeah.
even though we make up 2.5%, and that's such a small, even if it seems like a lot when you look at the numbers, it's not in the grand
Yeah.
scheme of things,
Yeah,
specifically in the
true.
US. And so I'm very happy that you've fought through your shyness and decided to share your experience because we think we're alone until we start meeting other people. And then
Yeah,
also to have your perspective from coming from abroad and
yeah,
have that French aspect to make it a bit more global because those problems exist other places too beyond the
yeah,
US.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
always helpful to have community around that.
Always.
Yeah. But I want to continue just like fun aspects of your experience in the US. How did you balance cultural differences while staying true to yourself? What activities did you get involved in? I mean,
Um,
you were in New York in one of the most like robust cities with something happening every
yeah,
day.
yeah,
And then
true.
maybe what was the most surprising or unexpected part of your Fulbright experience in New York in the US?
I think. In terms of trying to balance school and just discovering New York,
Mm.
it was easy and it was made possible because Cardozo allows us to have to what we do. You do work a lot and you need to have this personal, to take your personal time to work and everything. But you also have free time where you can just, that's also something I love about New York because you don't necessarily need to like have something planned. You can just go out
Yeah.
and say, okay, I'll just do these blocks and I'll see where I go, or like the coffee shop I found, or the books, or what I
Mm.
see, because sometimes just what you it's enough. It makes your day.
And
Just
then
like,
you
okay, that was
randomly
fine.
run into somebody and then plans
Exactly. Or
spiral
like,
from there.
exactly.
Yep.
So so that was most of the time it was just me saying, okay, I'm gonna go to me. I love baking and
Mm.
I love sugar basically.
Yeah, same.
And
It's an
to
addiction
me
a
it
little
was
bit.
I know, but it's fine. So it would, for me, it would be okay, let's go to this bakery, and I would go make the little treat, more like the walk there, just sit, trying to find if there is like maybe a little park or something on the block, or like just somewhere outside where I could sit. I would go by myself or with friends. Obviously, museums, galleries, restaurants if you can. It's There was just so many things you can do. But obviously, the most surprising stuff is when you just going to Trader Joe's and then I saw Hugh Jackman. Or
Oh, wow.
you just, yeah, one time I was late because I did an externship at the Supreme Court and then
Nice.
I almost like stumbled on Harry Styles and I was like, oh, on my
Interesting.
way I was
Wow.
almost like, can you just walk faster or something? And then I realized it was him, and I was like, okay, it's fine. It's
You
very,
gave him a
it's very
pass.
funny. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. But
that's
like, I'm
funny.
running late, but then I'm like, okay, it's fine, Harry Styles, just walk your way. But I think, yeah, it's the kind of the thing when you just really not expect it. That's just
Hmm.
when it's funny, and that's just New York in general. I think it's the whole to me the entire like the vibe of the city is you'll just get surprised anyway, or you never really know. But that's what makes it exciting and worth like living and experiencing.
Yeah, New York is such a magical
Definitely,
place,
yeah,
but
it is.
Paris is
It
as
is.
well, so you get the best of both
Yeah,
worlds. So,
yeah.
yeah. Can you
You're
talk
so
about
lucky.
can you talk about how your experience doing Fulbright and law school in the US
Yeah.
has shaped the vision of your career and what
Mm.
you're practicing now, what you're up to at this point?
So at the moment, I'm doing a 6 months internship in a boutique law firm in Paris. I love this firm. I love what I'm doing because they manage to, they're very well known in France. They also deal with like international topics and everything, but they're
Mm-hmm.
really well known in France. And still they manage to keep this like not level of secrecy, but like it's still very intimate at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. And I just love it. It's not maybe if I tell you the name, you don't know them, but if you're someone in the business, you know them. And I don't
Right.
know, I like this level of I don't know, I just find it very like very cool. That's the only word that comes up to my
They
mind,
have
but it's
the
just very
cachet, the industry cachet.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so if you're outside, you don't know them. But when you're in and like when it's I love it. It's the perfect mix in my opinion. So I'm doing this for 6 months and it's my first time working at a law firm in France.
Mm.
It's a very humbling experience
Yeah.
because it's just you just learn every day and sometimes you do stuff and you're like that's just bad. But there are moments where it's great and you learn so much every day. So I'm very happy. And I think in terms of what I learned from the Fulbright and the US experiences, it's okay to have, I think I learned that it's okay not to have a very clear and specific idea of what you want to do
Mm.
and know that it can change and shift because in my opinion, if you change your mind on something, it's good. It means that you thought about it
Mm-hmm.
and reflected on it a lot. And I came to this conclusion because with Fulbright, I didn't think I was going to get it, but then I did, and it kind of changed everything
Right.
because it opened the door of oh maybe I could work in the US,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I want to go back to New York, or maybe I can work in New York and then come back. And so being it's good to have goals and aspirations, but it's also good to know that it can change, and that's absolutely fine. So now when I think about my professional life, I think because I used to give myself very like specific time, like timelines kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay,
Makes
in
sense.
5 years you finish, you do this, you do that, and you're in that place. But now I'm just like, I think I want to do this, but I don't know where exactly. I want to work in IP, want to work in law, but I don't know the specifics of it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if it's going to be at a law firm. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have several clients on different areas of law, of IP law. I don't know if I want it to be in a movie production company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll know I'll be in-house and I'll work for the company and their best interest and all the artist that comes in to work with us. There are so many different options, and sometimes having too many options can be scary.
Yeah.
But when it comes to that, I feel like I'll do my best to have an open mind and not have something fixed. Because that's also when you get surprised and something good comes out of it. But the goal is still to pass the bar exam and to be a lawyer, but then just really wherever I will be, the goal is always to work in art and trying to, find the intersection between the two. And where exactly I'll be in the process of like a creative process, I don't know. I'll be there, but I just don't know exactly where. So yeah,
That's beautiful. Life requires flexibility, so I'm glad
exactly, exactly.
you're navigating that now. But speaking of that, because the audience is primarily students or younger
Yeah,
attorneys, people just starting out in the field, what can you share? What have you learned from your story thus far that can show young Black women considering similar paths what to do? And what piece of advice would you give someone in France specifically or
yeah.
elsewhere, anywhere, thinking about applying to Fulbright? What advice would that be?
I think I'm always a bit scared to give people advice
Hmm.
because I don't know. I feel like I'm not like legitimate to tell, like to say.
I had
And
a
it's a,
friend that
and it's
said
a,
that the other night, and I was like, you're the
yeah.
perfect person to give advice. It's
I
always the people
know.
that are scared to give advice that probably
Yeah,
should be the ones
yeah. You
who
think
are offering their insights.
you
But
think
continue.
because I don't know. I feel like when, or at least it's because when I think about people giving me advice, I think of my mom. I think of like very important figures in my life, like people in my life, or people I aspire to, or to I look up to more. And so it's mostly because I don't see myself as in that position. But if I can say, based on my experience, there are a couple of things I would say. Just take your time, breathe, take it day by day because studying law is heavy, it's difficult. You can enjoy the process, but
Mm,
you have to know that it also, as much as it requires like hard work and discipline, you also need time to rest and
hmm.
think. It's important to take breaks and to just reflect, to do something that has no relation to your studies anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what kind of saved me from not dropping out, but it saved me from thinking that's the end. Because I feel like when you study law, I mean, anything really, when you're studying, sometimes it can feel like it's your entire life. Whereas
that's
I'm
so
like,
true.
no, it's
Especially the
part of your life.
environment too. The people
Yeah,
around you think the same way,
yeah,
right? Hmm.
exactly. So that's my first advice. Breathe, take your time day by day. And the second one would be you can dream big because your goals and aspirations, they're valid and they might be completely different from someone else, but it's absolutely fine. Don't like look up to people, but you don't need to have a clear and very specific and like perfect idea of what you're gonna do or who you're gonna be. It's absolutely fine. I think that those are the two big pieces of advice I have. But in terms of like more like logistics, when you have a goal, just sit by yourself or with people who support you and just write down everything you have to do to achieve it, whether it's about finance, because sometimes, especially when whether you are from the US or not, studying to the US in terms of like financial finance aspect is very important, and you have to have this figure out before you embark on something like as crazy as it is to study abroad, and especially in the US. And yeah, like, as soon as you have a goal and something you want to do, think about it, but also sit down and think about the logistics and how achievable it is. Sometimes it could mean, okay, I could do this in a year. Sometimes it's a bit more. It's okay. Prepare yourself, be open to change, and breathe. Just take it day by day. Yeah. If someone was to apply to Fulbright or even in the US, or any to apply to anything really, I think those pieces of advice might be worth considering.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that was good. I think that was helpful insights that I'm
Yeah.
sure the audience would appreciate. So, as we wrap up this episode, I usually end the podcast with the signature question is, who is your
Yep.
sister-in-law? And this can be any Black woman in the legal field that you admire, whether it's a peer, a classmate, a friend, a colleague, mentor, or even a celebrity attorney that you admire
Yeah.
from afar. But who would you like to shout out?
Because it had to be someone in the law field. Because obviously I was gonna give, the basic but very true answer of my mom. I look up to my mom,
Of
obviously.
course. Yeah, we could
Um,
shout her
so
out too. She
yeah,
put you
so
in the
my mom.
she brought you to this earth that is now you're in the
Exactly.
legal field, so she counts.
Exactly. Uh, so my mom, and the second person I look up to, so she's a French politician,
Mm.
and her name is Christiane Taubira,
Oh yeah, heard about her.
exactly.
Yeah.
And although I have not read her book, because I think she wrote a book, I think from what I know from her life and her journey in politics, it's very inspiring. And whenever I see interviews of her, she's both very composed
Yeah.
and always it's to me it's fascinating how she carries so much wisdom and power and is
Mm.
still very not quiet but like at peace.
Mm.
She's just like a mix of being calm and powerful, and yet you know those people who are they are calm but still it doesn't mean they just let everything pass. It
Right.
doesn't mean if you insult her she'll just say okay it's fine. No.
Mhm.
And I think it's very good to aspire to have this kind of, I don't know, just quiet, comment dire, I don't have the word, but
You could
she's,
even
I don't
say
know,
it
it's,
in French. We can end in
yeah,
French.
but even in, that's the thing, even in French, I'm like, yeah, she's just like quietly powerful, and I love that.
Mm.
I think it's something that we could all aspire to, because it
Mhm.
doesn't mean it doesn't mean you let people affect you or something, or like critics or something. It
Mhm.
just means that you who you are, you know your values, and you stand up for them, and you know how to do it effectively without being extremely like nah in someone's face.
Yeah, yeah. You don't
Um,
always have to
and
be
also
loud to be heard.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think when you're very shy and reserved, which I don't think she is in her personal life. I don't know her, but obviously I don't know her, but I don't think she is. But it's good to know that it's okay to be shy and reserved. It
Mm.
doesn't mean that you don't have a voice. It just means you express it in a different way. And I think it's very good. And she's, in my opinion, also very inspiring because she introduced and defended the law legalizing same-sex marriages since and
Ah,
adoption in
wow.
France. And I think to me, it's very powerful when someone whose own community has been targeted for so many
Mm.
years and is constantly seen as a threat, kind of,
Right.
because that's what happened, is able to defend other groups and other communities that
Mhm.
maybe she doesn't like personally relate to, but still
Mhm.
she carries their voices on the same level as her own.
Mm.
And yeah, I think she's just to me, it's like respect everything she does. I'm always like, yeah, you
Mm.
just, what a woman. So yeah, the Christiane Taubira would be the person I would love to meet one day if somehow I managed.
Yeah. One day you
Yeah,
will. I can see it.
yeah,
Yes,
hopefully.
yes.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, that's such a powerful way to end. I really appreciate you coming all the way from France, zooming in with me, and taking the time out to do this international dialogue. Merci beaucoup, et c'était un grand
De rien, de
plaisir.
rien.
But
Le
I,
plaisir était pour moi.
ah, c'est gentil, vraiment. So for the audience to know, where can they find you? Where can they follow you or reach
Where can
out?
they find me?
Yes, if you'd
They
like to
can
be
find me
found.
on, yeah, I'm on LinkedIn if they want to connect. I am on social media. I literally opened like recently an account where I post like cultural recommendations. So whether it's
Nice.
music or a book or just a specific song or a recipe, it's everything that goes into my head, and I feel like I want to recommend. For the moment,
Right.
it's mostly my friends, but it's super. The name is in French. It's called Monographie.
Mm,
And monography is a piece of work that follows a character or like a specific topic, and I just found the word funny, and so I used it. So I think if you type like Anita's recommendations, you
mm,
just end up on my account as well.
nice.
As
It for
it's
everyone.
underscore monography underscore. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I'll tag it for the audience to check out. Thank you
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much for
That's so nice.
participating. Really appreciate
Thank
your
you for
insights.
inviting me. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be part of this podcast. I
Of
think it
course.
has a very strong and important message of community, and I just feel extremely lucky and grateful that you thought about me and reached out to
Yeah.
participate.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this beautiful conversation with Anita. Her story is such a reminder that chasing big opportunities isn't just about academics or careers. It's about growth, resilience, and stepping into spaces where your voice matters. Please make sure to follow her recommendations account at underscore monographie underscore on Instagram. If you love this episode, share it with a friend who might need that little push to take their own leap. And remember, your own journey, your identity, and your dreams all belong at the table. You can follow Sistahs in Law on Instagram at Sistahs in Law and on TikTok under the same handle. I will also be putting out a U.S. Fulbright program checklist guide that you can order on Gumroad, and it has all my insights and tips for how to apply, how to submit a successful application to the Fulbright program. I've also included model essays as well as some little insights about the English teaching assistant program, as well as some of my knowledge about the research program. So I will provide a link to that as well. And I'll be sharing this episode through my Substack page on the vision board as well. So feel free to check that out when you get a chance. Until next time, take care and keep showing up fully as yourself. Peace and love.